Well, our dietitian Lucy Jones is here to explain a little bit more to us. I mean, some people will just say, and have been saying on the email and the text, oh, for goodness sake, they're just being fussy. There's nothing more to it than that. Do you think there is?
I do think there is, but it is very common in the public for that thought to be there. But what we do tend to see is that it happens in certain situations. So it might be more of a psychological basis if somebody's had a traumatic event with eating or been force-fed as a child. And there does appear to be more genetic or physical components in some people. It's been linked to autism and hypersensitivity of taste and touch. And it's also been linked to OCD and hygiene issues. And you know, we've got to see if it is a more genetic link, because certainly we see in parents that have restrictive eating behaviour, it does tend to crop up again in their children.
Yes, it's interesting because we were talking to Kevin earlier on as well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, these are quite extreme cases. His diet from very young consisted of pizza and crisps.
For years.
Literally those two things. Now, if you have children yourself and your child starts getting picky, can that just sort of escalate over a period of time? I.e., if they get away with not eating broccoli for a while, does that start to change their pattern so they think, well, I don't have to eat some things, and you can cause a problem that way?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer, because what's the alternative? We definitely shouldn't be force-feeding children, and yes, you can be exposing them regularly, but if a child really won't eat a certain food, there's not really a lot you can do about it, apart from continuing to expose them to it and to perhaps have reward charts and such things. But it's a very difficult situation. But if you're a child and you're seeing your parents have a very disordered way of eating, of course that will influence your own food choices.
OK, we also talked to him about, you know, he literally can't even pick up some of these things, and the lady in our report as well, you know, she was talking about broccoli being a fight or flight food, which sounds really quite extraordinary.
It's a dramatic response, absolutely, and I think that's where we've got to actually make that distinction. We're not talking about people that, I don't know, don't really like chocolate or doesn't really like broccoli. These are people that will eat, I don't know, up to 5 or 6 foods in total, and everything else makes them physically want to run away.
Is the texture thing a sort of an excuse? Because often you hear that. I mean, Lou and I were talking about tomatoes, which is sometimes a problem for people who don't otherwise have other issues. They sort of say they just don't like the business of eating them. They might like the flavour because they eat it in other things.
Absolutely, and we see that a lot. A lot of fussy eaters will eat tomato ketchup, they'll eat the tomato puree on the bottom of a mozzarella pizza.
Yes.
But it's the texture, it's the squelch. And often I think people sort of link that with the food having gone off and the hygiene and the germs.
It's kind of partly to do that, but you have to turn that way around in as much as you make that part of the fun. Because some of the messiness of food, it can also be the fun part of it, can't it?
Absolutely, and I think that's part of the treatment. Actually, when you're exposing someone to a new food, get them to play with it. And this is where messy play comes in childhood. It's very important not to be pedantic about hygiene at weaning. They need to get messy, they need to play with it, they need to squelch it all over their faces and hair to actually have that fun with the food.
Tomatoes in hair.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the
We
top
mostly
tip,
did ice cream in there, but we should have tried tomatoes.